Hello, I'm Robert J.E. Simpson, and this is the Banterflix movie review show here on NVTV. On this edition, we take a trip into the turmoils of puberty with Pixar's Inside Out 2. You've got red on you. We celebrate 20 years of the original rom-com, Edgar Wright's cult classic, Shaun of the Dead. And this week's pick of the streams is Martin Scorsese's treatise on toxic fandom, King of Comedy. No, your eyes don't deceive you. I have indeed regenerated again. Yes, I think that makes me, the Tom Baker of Banterflix at this point? Possibly the John Pertwee, depends on whether or not you include Peter Cushing. Jim still isn't well, I'm afraid, so you are stuck with me for today. And I have to say, it's very strange sitting in this chair. I've been oogling it ever since we recorded the pilot way back in 2015. Joining me today is Fright Club NI's Danny Brown.
Hello, Robert.
And local writer Maria McQuillan.
Hi, Robert.
So, some local news first. The opening feature of this year's Belfast Film Festival has been announced, and it runs this year from October 31st through to November 9th. And the gala opening at Belfast's Cineworld on Halloween night itself is Aisling Clarke's Irish language horror film, Fuwaka. Haunted by a personal tragedy, home care worker Shaun is sent to a remote village to care for an agoraphobic woman who fears the neighbours as much as she fears the Nishi, sinister entities who she believes abducted her decades before. As the two develop a strangely deep connection, Shaun is consumed by the old woman's paranoia, rituals and superstitions, eventually leading her to confront the horrors from her own past. Now, the Belfast Film Festival this year, I'm not sure if you've heard much about it yet, but they are promising to foreground Irish films generally, and it seems that Irish language cinema is finally having its moment. We saw Kneecap earlier on this year, and now we have this, the first Irish language horror, at least as far as I'm aware of. It feels like we've come an awful long way from Bob Quinn's rural crime drama Poaching, which was, in case you don't know, Ireland's first Irish language film, made only in 1978. Any thoughts on this? Danny, you're a horror aficionado. How do you feel about a horror film for the Irish Film Festival?
Yeah, I think it's exciting that it's opening it. I have watched a couple of clips online from it, and I'm really digging the vibe. You know, it looks like it's got that kind of folklore horror, as well as being really wonderfully lit from those few clips we've seen already. It looks like it's kind of using elements of The Witch, Eggers the Witch, and Midsummer as well in there, which again has me all kinds of excited.
What about yourself, Maria?
I'm not a huge fan of horror, but I do enjoy horror that leans more into the folklore aspect. And from what I've seen, it looks like a really beautiful film, you know, as a horror film. And yeah, I'd be intrigued to actually watch it after hearing the description and seeing the clips that I've seen.
I'll be interested to see it myself. I did interview Aisling for a documentary on found footage cinema a while ago, the found footage phenomenon, and certainly has some interesting things to say. So I am intrigued to see what it's like given the chance to run in a completely different area of horror. And you know, I'm a horror fan, so it doesn't take an awful lot to get me into the cinema. Look, should we talk about some films? Mr. Editor, if you can, play the clip.
Our little girl's growing up so fast. Ow. Sorry.
It should be nothing but smooth sailing from...
Hello. I'm anxiety. Where can I put my stuff?
A new emotion.
Oh, I'm sorry. We wanted to make such a good first impression.
What do you mean, we?
I'm Envy.
Look at your hair. Oh, yeah, not happening.
That's on we.
On what?
It's what you would call the boredom.
Our newest film this week, Inside Out 2. Riley Anderson has turned 13, and thanks to her trusty personified emotions, has developed a secure sense of self. She and her friends have just been invited to a hockey camp when puberty hits, and with it a raft of new emotions, including embarrassment, envy, ennui, and a chaotic anxiety. Will Joy be able to keep control in the face of these new complexities, and will Riley make it onto the high school hockey team? That's it in a nutshell. Maria, you look like you might have enjoyed this one. No?
I did and I didn't. I think, for me, it was almost a slightly painful experience because I don't think there's been a movie since 8th grade that has kind of thrown me back in time as quickly, because there was a lot of parts of the film where I was like, oh god, this is this is too much. I actually like can't cope with like the not quite my experience on screen, but like the seeing it again, that kind of sphere of teenagehood. And again, the animation at times slightly put me off. I don't know why. I wasn't like there was something very shiny about the film.
Okay.
But like there's so many parts of it that were incredibly beautiful. I loved the new emotions, especially anxiety. I thought, is it Maya Hawke? Did an amazing job. Like her, at every point, I was like absolutely with her as the emotion, especially during like certain pivotal scenes. Again, I thought there was like beautiful interpretations of how an emotion is felt, especially one as strong and as new to Riley as anxiety. Yeah, there was a lot to love about it, but I think for me, I kind of came away from it thinking, oh, I really liked Inside Out. I don't know if I liked Inside Out 2 as much. Maybe that's just because when I saw Inside Out, it was just such a brilliant concept, a unique concept for a film, whereas this was kind of redoing it all over again.
I think that's a fair comment to make. Obviously, when you've had something that's vastly original and you go back to that same territory, it's often a law of diminishing returns. That said, I mean, I'm shocked actually looking at some of the stats about this. This has become the most successful animated feature film of all time. It's taken in over $1.7 billion at the box office to date, which is no small achievement and is a complete turnabout for Pixar, who over the last few years have suffered a wee bit. Now, the pandemic obviously got everybody, but things like Onward and Turning Red were hit massively by them not being able to get into cinemas. And then we had the Lightyear box office disaster. Elemental did eventually do okay. I gather it has kind of put them back up in the place, but it didn't hit the magic numbers that Disney want. So, Danny, yourself?
Yeah, I agree that it's sort of this. It's similar to the first one, but I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. I feel like, yes, we kind of got the same idea that joy has to go on a journey, but this time with the other emotions that weren't in, yes, we're in the first film, but didn't go on the journey that her and Sadness went on, and they're going through similar territories, but because puberty's going on, it's all a little bit different. So you're getting the same, but tweaked for puberty and what all the different characters are going through. So I think that it is, yeah, it's kind of a similar narrative to the first, but there's just enough difference in it that I was still able to kind of follow along and enjoy it. The new emotions are fantastic. My favourite is Ennui. I thought Ennui was great. There's also another little emotion that kind of creeps in. Don't want to spoil it, but I love the other little emotion that makes an appearance briefly. But I think, like Maria was saying, anxiety in particular, I feel the characterization of anxiety was perfect. I feel that it wasn't just someone who came in. The character didn't just come in and be super anxious. There was a build up to that, and I think it was something that was quite real, and I think is really important for not just young people but also older viewers to kind of understand that anxiety doesn't just come on the scene and explode. Like, there's a build up to it, and I think that the film captures that really, really well. I think that we're getting to see a lot more of Riley in this film than we did in the first film, and that's kind of nice in a way because we're getting to see the situation that she's in and how that in turn, how the emotions are reacting to that more so than we did maybe in the first one. So I think that, again, given the kind of content of this one, that's really important.
I have to say I quite enjoyed it. I did enjoy the first one. This felt slightly different. I think the balance between what's going on inside, between your internal and your external person, was quite a nice way of kind of taking it. And I suffer from anxiety issues and had recently had an anxious episode to kind of then go from that to watching this and recognizing that as an adult. I mean, that bonus character that we got, that we obviously won't spoil for people, does have that feel. It's like you can see where this series could go if you jump on another 10, 20 years. I'm at that point where all those emotions that supposedly go wild in your teenage years are managed, but also like to flare up sometimes and create massive problems within your life. And I think that's probably true for a lot of folk. So I got a lot out of this. I'd be interested to see what parents make of this. But yeah, look, from adolescence on to our 20s, were either of you fans of Channel 4's sitcom Spaced?
Oh, yes.
I've never seen it.
You've never seen it?
I've never
It's
seen
an absolute
Space.
treat. Go watch it. Go watch it right now.
So in cinemas from this weekend, freshly remastered and ahead of a 4K Blu-ray release in December, zombie-infused rom-com Shaun of the Dead marks its 20th anniversary, and here's a bit of what to expect.
She wants a cuddle. 2 seconds. Ed, just get her off me!
Relive it on the big screen
Oh, we're gonna borrow your car, okay? Run!
in Dolby Cinema.
Simon Pegg plays Shaun, an electronic salesman whose relationship falls apart just at the onset of a zombie apocalypse. Initially oblivious to what's going on around him, he determines to sort his life out, rebuild his relationship, save his mum, and then head for a nice cool pint in the local pub while everything goes back to normal. Danny, you watched this first time round. You've rewatched it again 20 years on. Have you seen it in between?
I've watched this movie so many times. I actually did my uni dissertation on the Cornetto trilogy. So I watched Shaun of the Dead quite a lot, and Hot Fuzz, and World's End, and Spaced. And I love them all. Just anything, to be fair, Edgar Wright has put out, like, I love it. I eat it up. So going back to watch Shaun of the Dead for this was not a problem at all.
Has it stood up for you?
Yes. I never get tired of the dialogue in this, the shot gags, everything in it, I just think is perfect. It's the perfect comedy horror, and it's also the perfect, as you say, it's a rom-com, but it's whenever I was writing my dissertation, it was like 3 o'clock in the morning. I was running on like energy drinks, and I remember doing my closing paragraph, and the last sentence I wrote, and I submitted it with it in this, and I look back, I'm just like, God, why did I write this dissertation? But I stand by it for this film. The most important thing I learned from Wright's Cornetto trilogy is the importance of friendship. But it's really true. Like, this film isn't a rom-com about Shaun and his partner, her name escapes my head right now, but it's about the friendship between Nick Frost and Simon Pegg, you know, not just this one, all three of the films in the Cornetto trilogy, but this one I think in particular really encapsulates that friendship, and even the fact that it ends with, you know, the song "You're My Best Friend," like, that just captures it, doesn't it? It just, you know, it's, yeah, I love Shaun of the Dead. I love this movie.
Maria, Shaun of the Dead, was it the love letter to friendship for you, or was it something else?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like, I actually originally watched this film during the pandemic, when I had COVID. I really enjoyed it then, and then like watching it again for this show, I was like, God, this is such a great film. Like, I can see why they were like, this is the film that brought back the zombie genre. You know, like, there's so much to like in it. My favourite part of the film is when they're like trying to get to the pub, and they come across the group of people that are exactly the same as them. There was so much that I'd forgotten happened in the film, and the biggest surprise for me was I'd forgotten the final shot, which is in the shed playing games together, and You're My Best Friend playing. There's a lot to really like about it. It's so silly, it's so fun, and again, like, there's so many cool shots in it. Like, to watch it is a real treat.
I'm utterly biased in this because I watched this when it came out. I loved it. You know, I'm a big horror fan. I love my zombie films. So all those Romero references, the Night of the Living Dead stuff, the Sam Raimi stuff, you know, like, I hadn't even caught on. I don't think I'd ever caught on before that there's a reference to Ash in the store very early on. Ash from Bruce Campbell's character in the Evil Dead films. And it's just, you know, there's a rich cultural text. And even that scene that you talk about, Maria, with the two groups crossing over, I watched this with my partner last night, and she hadn't seen it before. And she's like, it's a bit. But we've been watching things like League of Gentlemen recently, and I sat her through Spaced, and suddenly you're seeing all these other people that are from that British comedy world, and you realise that this is quite a big production. A lot of those names still have relevance and cultural cachet today. I think it's a brilliant film. I think it's actually lasted pretty darn well, and having gone through the pandemic, it feels like it's just as pertinent as it ever was. You know, there's still a relevance there with this, and I'd happily introduce lots of other folk to it. So are you going to go out and watch it again in the cinema?
Absolutely.
Damn it. Maria?
We'll see. I might give it another 2 or 3 years before I watch it again.
So I'm determined to bring this show as down as I possibly can. Today, it's over to Jim with his pick of the streams.
You're gonna love me like nobody's loved me. Come rain or come shine.
Hi guys, Jim here. For this week's Pick of the Streams, I've picked the King of Comedy, Martin Scorsese's 1982 feature. It's available now on Disney+, but I'm sure you can find it on other VOD platforms to rent or buy. And since this season on the show we are championing physical media, some of you out there might even be able to watch it on DVD or Blu-ray. Remember those? But I have picked this film because next week sees the release of Joker, Folie, Deux. And for anyone out there who was a fan of Todd Phillips' previous film, judging by its box office, there was quite a few of you out there, I would recommend giving The King of Comedy a viewing if you've never done so, because some would say Todd Phillips was heavily inspired by this movie when he made Joker. Others, like me, would say he blatantly ripped it off. But hey, who am I to judge? We have a film here that deals with a comedian and his struggles and the struggles in his pursuit for fame in New York City. Sounds a little bit familiar. We have great central performance by Robert De Niro along with Sandra Bernhard and the late great Jerry Lewis. I know our lovely host Robert is a fan of this film, and I know with Cinepunked he's done a couple of events and a couple of podcasts about the movie. I'm not so sure about our two guests in the studio this evening, so it'll be interesting to see what they think of The King of Comedy.
King of Comedy features Robert De Niro as Rupert Pupkin, an aspiring stand-up comedy and fanatical obsessive of talk show host Jerry Langford, played by the legendary Jerry Lewis. A chance encounter outside the TV studio leads to Rupert's increasingly emboldened attempts to ingratiate himself into Jerry's life, and the lines between delusion and reality start to blur. I think this is a rich comedy with few laughs. I also think that De Niro's Pupkin shares a lot of traits with Travis Bickle in Taxi Driver, his previous collaboration with Martin Scorsese. And the whole thing, I think, is particularly relevant at the moment in light of recent conversations around toxic fandom with the likes of Chappelle Rowan. That's where I'm going to start this with. Danny, have you seen King of Comedy before?
Yes, I had seen it before. I watched it before going to actually see Todd Phillips' Joker, because I'd heard how much it influenced Joker, and I mean it didn't only influence, it's near enough the same thing. But it's really, I really enjoy it. I thought it was, you know, the performances again in it are fantastic. I think De Niro and Lewis, whenever they're on screen together, the tension that's there is, it's cringy but also kind of hilarious too. You know, the kind of way you're watching it and you're just like, you know, you almost expect Lewis to just attack De Niro at any point, you know, whereas Pupkin is so like manic and genuinely believes what he is doing is right and is the truth, that you're like, well, what could you do? Because you're justified by whatever's going on in your own head. And even the way the film's just put together with those kind of, the reality and fantasy starts to merge, and you almost, as an audience member, don't really know what's real anymore. You know, like that ending, like by the end of it, you're like, what, like, is this real? Is this what's happening? Yeah, I think it is fantastic, and it's very clear, not just Joker, but the influence that it's had then on other films that has come out since. So yeah, no, I think King of Comedy definitely has its place in cinema. Like.
Maria, was this your first time?
This was my first time watching it, yeah.
Is there going to be a second time?
No. No. I remember actually a couple of years ago, when I had a movie subscription, it came up and I was like, oh, I've heard a lot about that film, I should watch that film, and I never did. And then this was a good opportunity to watch it, but I won't be watching it again. I understand why it's, you know, it's so talked about by critics. And I actually saw this after having watched Joker a couple of years ago, and I found that a really weird experience because the whole way through it I was like, did Joker just copy and paste? It's like because there's just so many scenes where I was like, I think I've seen this before, and then I'd remember I'd seen Joker, you know. Yeah, there's a lot, like, it's incredible how like anxiety inducing this film is for me. Like watching it the whole way through, I was like, it's amazing how uncomfortable everything is, and it never gets like, no, I don't want to say boring or like one note. Like the whole way through, like they're all thoroughly believable characters, especially the two stalkers. Yeah, the scene where De Niro's character accosts outside Jerry outside of his apartment, and he just keeps being like, and Jerry, one more thing, Jerry, and Jerry, and I was like, I'm starting to feel annoyed for Jerry, you know, like it was, it was an experience to watch. I'll say that.
That's a good phrase for it. I've seen this several times, and I say, when it was suggested that we were going to watch this week, I was not very happy about the prospect. I haven't enjoyed it in the past. I think I may actually have enjoyed it more this time than I did previously, which is weird. My relationship with the film is changing over time. So it's an old film. Like you, Maria, I feel really uncomfortable with it. Partly because having worked within fandom circles and having met celebrities and done interviews and stuff, I sometimes worry that I come across like Rupert, and I'm that kind of geeky nerd who's obsessing and doesn't know my boundaries. I think I do, but I worry that I'm like Rupert. But I've seen too many people that are like that up close, and it is really disturbing, and it's uncomfortable, and it's unsettling. And this was made in 1981. In the 4 decades since then, I think fandom has gotten even worse. I think it's got more creepy. People have access that they don't have, that they've access now that they didn't have then. So when someone like Chapel Rowan comes on and says, like, this is unacceptable, the way that we're interacting right now, and I don't want to have to do this. This film is doing it in 1981, and it's really, really disturbing. So I feel uncomfortable, but I finally feel like I'm coming to terms with it's getting the point. I also really like an unreliable narrator. You know, this for me reminds me of a lot of other stuff. I did mention Taxi Driver already. There's a lot of parallels between those films. Also made me think of Peter Bogdanovich's Targets. I don't know if you've seen it. Highly recommend it. BFI stuck out a new Blu-ray not that long ago. It's also an interesting kind of space, and it is dealing with people and their delusions of reality. So it is a dark thing. But you're not going to watch this again?
I don't think so.
I mean,
it would have to be quite a while for me to forget some of the scenes in this film.
Danny, will you watch it again?
Not anytime soon, but yeah, I'd probably go back and revisit at some point.
Okay. I think this is far too downbeat a way to end the show, so I would like to end on something a little bit more positive. And that's a little bit of local film news.
Hello, I'm Hugh Bonneville, and I play Mr. Brown in the Paddington films. I'm thrilled to announce that ahead of the launch of Paddington in Peru later this year, we're going to be unveiling a number of benches featuring a statue of dear Paddington. So you can sit down and have a chat with the marmalade-obsessed bear. So watch this space for more information about Paddington coming to a bench near you.
So Studio Canal have announced that statues of Paddington Bear are going to be making their way across 20 cities in the United Kingdom during October ahead of the release of Paddington 3. That's Paddington in Peru. Can you guess where Northern Ireland's Paddington is going to be?
Bangor.
Is it Bangor?
It's very close to Bangor. It's going to Newtonards, of all places, in County Down.
Where's the connection?
Yeah, I've no idea why they've chosen Newtonards, but there is a statue going there. It will be there for a number of weeks. I haven't been able to find out the exact location from it. I used to live in Newtonards, so I was very interested to see where it will be. They've got one cinema currently. It's in the shopping centre complex. It's not where I'd want to put a statue, but we'll see. I imagine it's going to be up in the town square or something. Will you go and visit Paddington?
I mean, I guess. Is it going to be a permanent fixture, or is it just like a promotional like statue that they put there and then it's wicked away after a couple
I
of weeks?
believe it's going to be a temporary statue. But that said, these things sometimes do change. It may depend on the response to it locally. There is a Paddington in Leicester Square that's been there for quite some time, along with a number of other statues promoting different iconic film people. And I've been to visit that. I don't think I've got a selfie of me in it, but I have been to see it, and it's very cute, and I'd like the idea of this being here. I grew up on Paddington, I'm going to be honest. I remember the Michael Hornton narrated TV series from the 80s, and I still have my Paddington plushie from when I was a kid. He's very beaten up, but I still have him, and I love him, and I won't get rid of him, even though he's got holes. So I probably will go and visit, I've got to be honest. On that note, though, it strikes me that Northern Ireland doesn't have many homages to our film background. Can you think of any other statues that exist or artworks that?
Yeah, no statues. I think Ballymena recently, did they not do a mural to Liam Neeson?
Okay.
I think, and then, yeah, you've got the Charlie Chaplin stuff down by the Pneumatic. You've got the like steelwork thing. And then is there not a little tiny Charlie Chaplin on top of a roof somewhere in Belfast?
You know about that one, do you?
Yeah, I know about the little secret Chaplin.
It's run by St George's Market.
Okay.
I bet you don't know why Charlie Chaplin's even in Belfast.
Because he maybe was on the Pneumatic? Is that not the reason he's down by the Pneumatic? Is because they thought he maybe was on it? They thought,
there's research to suggest that he never actually was on the Pneumatic. But it was thought that he was. He does also have a family in Belfast. So I think it was his granddaughters ended up growing up here. Oh. So he does have family that still lives in Belfast today, as far as I'm aware. So there is some nice connections. But it just strikes me as being something that we don't have. A number of years ago, there was an attempt to get a statue of Patricia Quinn as Magenta in Rocky Horror erected within the grounds of Belfast City Hall, and that has yet to happen. Although, Pat, if you're watching, I'm doing my best for you. I really am. Pat's a friend.
Who else? Liam Neeson probably needs something. Ballymena, I'm surprised, hasn't done more with Liam Neeson.
I think if we looked at our wider Northern Irish...
James Nesbitt.
James Nesbitt, yeah, we've got him. Angela Lansbury is a Belfast descendant. She wasn't born here, but her parents were.
Sam Neill.
Get
something. Sam Neill. I would like him in his full Jurassic Park gear. A statue of him as Grant.
He's from Jim's country, so I'm sure Jim can lead the campaign
for that one. On that, yeah.
Kenneth Branagh.
Kenneth Branagh, yeah.
Yeah.
Why do we not have more Branagh stuff about?
I feel like that's incoming. Because I
think so?
Yeah, because he also, I think, a couple of years ago got an award from the city of Belfast. That was before he did Belfast, I'm pretty certain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's an archive of his stuff in Queen's University as well. It just strikes me, I don't know if it's partly because Northern Irish cinema as such is very much a latecomer. You know, I mentioned earlier, Potcheen's the first Irish language film, and that was only 1978. Northern Ireland as a separate film industry didn't come along until very late either, and so we don't really have that connection. But I am aware of lots of people who have ties to Ireland, whose parents were maybe from here, and I think we should be claiming them as part of our diaspora. You know, Martin Short, for example, who I'm thoroughly enjoying, and Only Murders in the Building at the moment on Disney, you know, is from our stock. You know, you've a lot of sort of Hollywood people in the 20s and 30s, you know, so why are we not? Would you like to see more of that kind of stuff?
I think we should have statues of all the people we've mentioned just lining that street where the QFT is.
Nice.
Just like standing leaning against fences and sitting on walls and stuff. That'd be nice.
I mean, make a nod to the old QFT and have them all up the back alleyway.
They're queuing.
I mean, that used to be really creepy going up there, so that would make it even more so. Who knows, maybe that's something that they should do, but it would be nice to see something else. So for now, we're getting Paddington, who as far as I know has no connections to Northern Ireland, apart from he's visiting and having some marmalade sandwiches. Yeah. So we'll all go out for a group photograph at some point soon. Folks, thank you very much for joining me today. Jim will hopefully be back soon. I'm not 100% certain if I'm regenerating next week into Who, but we'll see how it gets on, and until the next time. Danny, thank you very much for being here.
Thanks, Robert.
Maria, thank you.
Thanks, Robert.
Until the next time then, bye-bye.